Everyone, good morning, welcome. We'll get started about 12:01. We'll give everybody a minute to get in and then we'll get going. Hi, Wendy. Hi, Anne Green. Hi, Barry. Hi, Lauren. Hi, John. Hi, Pam. Hi, Mila. Hi, Ronnie. Nice to see everyone.
Welcome, everyone. As you're landing, I want to invite you to drop in the chat just so I know where you're calling from and one thing that's drawing you here today.
I'll give everyone a few more seconds to respond to Adam's request to put in the chat what was the question, where you're from and what's drawing you?
Exactly. Yeah, where you're calling from today and one thing that's drawing you here gives us a sense of what the intention is in this space and helps me hopefully meet what you're seeking.
I'm Alex Cholminsky from Newton, Massachusetts, and I'm interested in the subject just in general.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alex. And feel free to just drop your response in the chat too. We can all see each other's responses there.
Okay.
Good to have you here.
And we'll get started, and I'll do an introduction and introduce Adam. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's GROW session. GROW is an initiative of Talmid of Hebrew College, which gives participants the opportunity to gather, reflect, observe, and wrestle with topics relevant to our lives today and through a Jewish lens. My name is Robin Kahn, and I am one of the program and relationship directors of Talmid of Hebrew College. I am so happy to be here with you today for our session entitled, What is Creativity and Why Does It Matter? Creativity is often thought of as the realm of artists, but it's so much more than painting or writing. It's a way of thinking, problem solving, and engaging with the world. During today's session, we'll ask big questions. What do we mean by creativity? What does it require of us? What does it matter in our personal and collective lives? Drawing on insights from science and Jewish tradition, we'll explore how creativity shapes us and the world around us. If time permits, we'll engage in a short creative practice to experience firsthand how opening to creativity can reveal unexpected wisdom and new possibilities. I invite you to have a piece of paper and something to write with at hand. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce our inspirational presenter, Rabbi Adam Lavitt. Rabbi Adam is a spiritual companion, educator, and creative facilitator committed to helping people connect with their inner wisdom and explore what matters most. Rabbi Adam currently serves as the full-time director of learning at the Jewish Studio Project. Drawing from his background in pastoral care, education, and chaplaincy, Adam creates transformative spaces where people can deepen their connection to themselves, each other, and Jewish tradition. Adam has served as a spiritual leader in congregations, college campuses, and healthcare settings. Ordained at Hebrew College, where he earned a master's in Jewish education and the school's first certificate in pastoral care, Adam also completed training as a spiritual director and became a board-certified chaplain. An alumnus of Clahl's Rabbis Without Borders Fellowship and the Join for Justice Clergy Fellowship, Adam now works with the Jewish Studio Project, guiding educators, spiritual leaders, and seekers in introducing creativity and spirituality as pathways for growth and discovery. The Jewish Studio Project is Hebrew College's newest campus partner, and we are delighted to have Adam with us today.
Thanks, Robin. thanks everyone for being here. Really, really wonderful to just be together over this hour, whether you're joining with lunch in hand, tuning in from work or from home, or catching this recording later. And really wonderful to see the variety of folks who are here. We've got someone who is a creative facilitator with us. Really wonderful to have you with us, Lauren. And folks who I've encountered, I think, in other spaces, and many new folks. So welcome, welcome all of you. And thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Hebrew College, for making this space possible. So I want to begin, Rabbi, if you want to share the first slide and then the second slide. Here's sort of our title slide. Oop, and can you make it so it's full screen? I'm just seeing like part of it. I think if you click on slideshow. Perfect, awesome. I just want to just advance it one. So our mission at the Jewish Studio Project is to build creative capacity across the Jewish community. And we envision a future in which every person engages their creativity to cultivate resilience, well-being, and spiritual vitality. So we're really an organization that brings together the power of Jewish learning, of Beit Midrash, of Torah, with creative practice to help people access their inner wisdom and imagine new possibilities for themselves, for their communities, and for the world. And we believe that creativity is the best tool we have for exploring, adapting, and bringing forth new ways to move through, hopefully to thrive in our ever-changing world. As Robin alluded to a little bit, Jewish Studio Project actually began while its co-founder, Rabbi Adina Allen, and I were rabbinical students right here at Hebrew College. So it's especially meaningful to be here with you all today, over a decade later, sharing how this work has blossomed and some of what we've learned from engaging it. Robin, if you want to stop the share, just so I can see everyone. I'll just say a few words. So last year we deepened the connection, like Robin was saying, between JSP and Hebrew College by opening a new studio on Hebrew College's campus, a physical and programmatic home that's offered rabbinical students ongoing space to process the feelings and insights that emerged during their training, and has supported two really exciting fellowships that we ran this last year. One, a Rabbinic Leaders Studio, a small cohort-based program for Hebrew College rabbinical students, and the East Coast Educators Studio, which included several Hebrew College faculty and campus partners in its second cohort, which just concluded. And for those who are interested or know someone who might be interested, we're actually launching our third cohort of the Educators Studio for folks in, we're calling it sort of the central and southern states. And applications for that will open on Friday. Over the past 10 years, JSP's helped thousands of people across the country, educators, clergy, artists, nonprofit leaders, activists, and seekers of all kinds, reclaim creativity not just as something reserved for a special class of people, for people who have special training, but as something essential to being human. More fundamentally, we don't teach people to make art. We help them build creative muscles through art making that they can use in teaching and parenting and spiritual direction, and praying and leading, grieving, you name it. Before we move into the heart of the session, wanted to just open up for a moment in case there were any questions about the Jewish Studio Project itself. Okay, great. Well, go ahead. Mark, do you have a question?
What does it mean to be resilient? What does that mean? Resilient art.
Well, that's a good segue into the session itself, which is really about that very thing. So I'm happy to move us into that. Thanks for the question. And if folks have questions about Jewish Studio Project, happy to answer those later. I know that there will be a follow-up email, and you can learn more about us there and be in touch. So creativity is often misunderstood, right? We think of it as painting, poetry, dance, but today we're gonna ask some deeper questions, right? What if creativity isn't just about making art, but a way of being? And to Mark's point, a way of hopefully being like flourishing, being resilient. And what if it's essential, not just a cute little add-on for navigating the complexity of our lives? So today we're going to hopefully be able to explore what creativity actually is, what science and Jewish traditions say about its power. And if we have time, we'll engage in a short, simple creative practice together. Robin, if you want to share the third slide. So advance one more there. Perfect. So I want to invite us all to think back to a time when you felt really creative, maybe as a child or perhaps later in life. What were you doing? How did it feel? Maybe it was outside or in a classroom or somewhere else at home.
Like a game.
Did you, sorry, Alex, did you say something?
Yeah, it felt like a game. Fun.
It was like a game that you were playing? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Right. So many of us had moments like this as kids when creativity flowed freely. And yet for most of us, creativity didn't last. Robin, if you want to just stop the share so I can see everyone again. I want to invite you to raise your hand digitally or physically if you've been told something like, you're not creative, stick to the rules, put the paintbrush down. That's not the right way to do it. I can certainly think of a moment like that for myself. I don't know if the rest of you can think of a moment like that. Right. A lot of folks have experienced moments like these. It's pretty normal. I can think for myself of a high school art teacher who told me I wasn't making art the right way. And I decided at that moment that this wasn't for me. This wasn't something that I should be doing. And it's not just that people, maybe teachers, maybe parents in those moments sort of throw us off from something that we loved and weren't so self-critical about, drawing or singing or dancing. They perhaps inadvertently contributed to the ways we've been cut off from our innate creativity, right? From our most vital source of power. Robin, if you want to share the next slide. And as I read this quote, this is a quote by our co-founder, Rabbi Adina Allen. I want to invite you to just notice what it stirs in you hearing these words. And not necessarily to share that out loud, but you can drop in the chat or write for yourself. What is this evoking for me? What is this stirring in me? So Rabbi Adina Allen writes, formed in the divine image, creativity is woven into the fabric of who we are. We are created creative. It is at the core of what it means to be human and of how we connect to the divine. So just invite you to reflect for a moment. What stands out to you about this idea? Maybe dropping something in the chat, maybe a particular word or phrase that you're curious about or that has some energy for you. And I'll just say a few words about this quote. This is from Rabbi Adina's new book, The Place of All Possibility. She is really lifting up this powerful idea that in Jewish tradition, creation is the very first act, right? Torah begins with the words Breshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. And a few verses later, Torah tells us humans are created b'tselem Elohim, right? In the image of this divine creative force. That means that we are all in Adina's words, created creative. And Ronnie adds, I love this, woven into the fabric of who we are, right? Creativity is woven into the very fabric of who we are. It's built in. It's not something that we necessarily acquire, but it's something that we have the choice to access because it's here. It's right here, not somewhere else. And Robin, if you want to go to the next slide. Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, writer and theologian who founded the Reconstructionist movement of Judaism, wrote, "Every creative act adds to the meaning of life and is a revelation of the divine." Right? And I feel like that's an extension of this idea. There's some way that we are co-creators. We tap into this divine creative energy as we, hopefully with good intentions, innovate, create, bring forth something new, open our imaginations and let them open new pathways for action, for problem solving, for grappling maybe with a challenging relationship or a challenging work situation, or a larger challenge. This isn't just lofty thinking, right? This is really deeply practical. Artists, educators, spiritual leaders all know when old maps fail us, when our habits actually get in the way of solving problems and of adapting, creative approaches, right, can offer new ways of seeing, new perspectives on old ideas and assumptions. They can help us get unstuck and traverse moments of uncertainty. And just really hang out with what we don't know. We don't have to like get it right when we're engaging in creative practice or creative possibilities or process. We can really just engage until a generative insight hopefully emerges that can carry us forward. I see in the chat, Barry says, as a psychologist, I've gotten used to thinking in terms of individual differences, that some people are more creative than others. I like the idea that we're all born creative. Yeah, that's really such a common idea that, as we were saying before, creativity is just for a special group of people. And we're really trying to help folks understand that it's an innate thing that you can tap into. We're all given it. And there might be something that made us think we don't have it, but it's right here inside of us. And Panina adds, at some point I told myself I wasn't artistic, but taking a step back. This quote by Rabbi Allen reminds me that being creative is something that is part of us, since we are created in the image of the divine creator. Yeah, this is really our core theological foundation. And these Rabbi Adina, Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, these thinkers really flesh this idea out in beautiful ways, and get to the heart of why creativity matters. And the next set of quotes, if you want to advance the slide, Robin, give us a little bit more of a concrete, I think, idea of what it means that creativity is intrinsic and gives us pathways to flourish. And to that opening question, gives us a tool to cultivate resilience in the face of uncertainty, in the face of challenge. This first quote on the top of the slide is by Elliot Eisner, who is a professor of art and education at Stanford. And he writes, through art, we come to feel very often what we cannot see directly. The arts have an ability to activate new ways with which to perceive and interpret the world. This has very much been our experience at Jewish Studio Project, that engaging in creative practice, often we'll do more visual art making, but really any creative practice helps us move from our idea about something, from our intellect, into a deeper and more embodied way of knowing something. And through that deeper way of knowing, we're actually able to access more wisdom, more insight, possibly new approaches to something that maybe feels stuck or intractable. And then the quote there on the bottom left of the slide is by renowned environmental activists and Buddhist scholar Joanna Macy. She writes, "Many of us are in an in-between time, groping in the dark with shattered beliefs and faltering hopes. And we need images for that time if we're to work through it." This really resonates for me. I mean, I feel like I'm living, in some ways, we're all living through a really uncertain time. And it's easy to feel like the ideas I had about the world, about this nation, about being Jewish are really being shaken. And I need some sort of practice to activate my imagination and find hopeful images for how I want to move forward. What do I actually want things to look like, right? Instead of just railing against how I don't want things to be, how can I find a generative new possibility? So really speaks to why creativity matters. And then the third quote here on the bottom right of the slide is by Maxine Greene, who was an educational philosopher, writer, and teacher. She wrote, "The function of the arts is to open windows on the possible, on what might be and what ought to be." Right? I feel like they're all in various ways getting at this idea that that creative practice, art making, dancing, creative leadership, bringing sort of new, playful, curious, creative ways into how you parent, how you lead, how you work with other people, is how we strengthen our hope muscles in a way, right? We're saying something else is possible here. I don't quite know what it is, but I'm gonna open up to what's waiting to be revealed that I don't see yet. What else could this be? How else could this shift, hopefully in a generative way, right? So the arts really allow us to navigate complexity, to hold grief and possibility, to live between what is and what ought to be, and to imagine better futures for ourselves, for our communities, for the world. And in this moment of rapid change and uncertainty, creativity, we really believe, is what helps us not just react, but respond with purpose, with intention, move toward what we want to see in the world. So I want to invite you to take a moment. I really appreciate the reflections that are coming in the chat, to just go into the chat and share a moment in your life where creativity helped you navigate something hard. And I'll just drop that question in the chat. And as you're thinking and writing, I'll share a little bit of how these ideas that we're talking about are supported by science as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, Robin. Thank you. So this is a quote by Professor of Educational Psychology, Dr. Anna Abraham. She writes, "The creative mode involves turning away from the path of least resistance and venturing into the briars, so to speak, in an effort to forge a new path through the gray zone of the unexpected, the vague, the misleading, or the unknown." Right? And from a neuroscientific perspective, the right brain is what allows us to hold multiple meanings at once. And that's what creativity allows us to access, open to, strengthen. The space that is able to hold ambiguity without trying to immediately make sense of something, which is more what our left brain, which is more like thinks in more black and white logical ways, is given the job to do, right? So we need to make an extra effort when we like immediately are trying to problem solve and feel like we're stuck, to like access this place where something surprising actually can emerge when we hold multiple meanings and we hang out a little bit longer in the not knowing, in our uncertainty. And that's really what Dr. Anna Abraham is inviting us to do here. And I'm seeing some reflections in the chat of times when creativity helped. Yeah, creativity helped me move through a time of loss. Yeah, yeah. I've really found that too. Marna writes, I'm recently recovering reconstructive foot surgery. Making art has been so therapeutic in expressing myself and distracting myself from the intense physical pain. Oh, really powerful. Beautiful. Yeah, we can really drop into a whole other reality sometimes through this creative engagement. Retirement planning. Absolutely, Barry. Yeah, I feel like when we're trying to make a big decision, creativity can really help us discern what is calling me forward? How do I want to move into this new chapter? Barbara says, I processed grief through a series of photographs called an elegy. Yeah, photography is a really powerful mode of creative processing. Navigating the streets of Boston and this past week in Los Angeles, creativity is always helpful. Yeah, I love that. I mean, it can really be mundane. It can be like finding a parking spot, navigating the streets, and opening up to new, flexible, adaptive ways of doing these things. Thank you for sharing, everybody. Right, so from these reflections, from this quote, we're really hearing the way that creativity helps us navigate challenge, navigate complexity, tolerate the ambiguity we encounter in the world, maybe the grief, the strong emotions we encounter in our lives with greater ease, with imagination, and maybe even with a little bit of joy. So really seeing here how creativity is good for the mind, good for the spirit, good for society, I think, at a larger scale, and that we really need it in these polarizing times, I think more than ever before. I'm going to go to the next slide, Robin. So this is a really wonderful book if you haven't gotten a chance to check it out. It's called Your Brain on Art. I think it came out last year or the year before. And it's by Susan Magsamen, who's the director of the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins, with co-writer Ivy Ross. Right, and she says they say, we are literally wired for art, and these experiences alter a complex physiological network of interconnected neurological and biological systems. The arts are one of the best ways to enliven these systems. The bottom line is the arts positively impact every area of your life, including your physical and mental health, learning, flourishing, and community building. Really just clear, I think, here what she's saying and what the benefits of the arts are. And this is, really based in neuroscience. There's this whole sort of emerging field of neuro arts, which actually measures the really direct beneficial impact that engaging in art making has on people. And it's not just art making. She talks about going to art galleries, hearing concerts. You can be an audience to something creative and benefit from it that way as well. Right, so modern science really supports the idea that creativity is not just an innate trait, which is what we've been saying, but is a skill that can be certainly developed and is a capacity that we have the choice to activate, to tap into, to access. And she's saying here, and the field of neuroscience really backs us up, that creativity can enhance brain plasticity. It can help us become more adaptive, more flexible, more compassionate with ourselves and others, more curious. But it can also improve our mental health and increase our overall well-being. And this is, I think, really part of what it means that arts cultivate resilience in all these ways. And later in this book, actually, in Your Brain on Art, Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross write that just 20 minutes a day of creative activity, like doodling or journaling or singing, can measurably improve our health and well-being. And that creativity sparks joy, fosters connection, and even rewires the brain. In other words, science is affirming what we already know, what our traditions already taught, that creativity isn't just a nice little add-on, it's essential. It's a core element of what it is to be human. So I want to just look quickly at our screen here. Robin, if you want to stop the share for a moment. Okay, great. So I'd love to just pause here for a moment and open it up for some questions. This was a lot of information, and love to just hear, yeah, what's coming up for you? What questions do you have? What's emerging for you about the role of creativity? So feel free to drop in the chat or raise your hand. I see Ronnie and then Mila. Feel free to come off mute, Ronnie.
I can't help but think I love this. I love the Jewish Studio Project, but creativity can also be used in negative ways. Invention, thinking outside the box, all of these things can be used, unfortunately, in destructive ways. How do we deal with that? How do we balance this? When we aspire, certainly as Jewish educators, as I am, we aspire to the kind of wonderful, revelatory, expansive creativity that we're discussing here. But there is another tact, another track that creativity can take.
Yeah, Ronnie, that's a really important question. I was actually feeling that too as thinking about this presentation, that we're seeing lots of ways in which innovation, creativity can be used in malicious, harmful ways, actually.
Yes.
And I think that's why at Jewish Studio Project, we really root the creative process in as a spiritual practice, as a manifestation of our connection with something bigger than ourselves, whether that something bigger than ourselves is our community, our connection with God, perhaps. Because when creativity happens, really like for its own sake or in a small-minded way, it can lead to harm, right? So it needs to be a spiritual practice, I think. Ideally, it needs to be something that helps you connect to something larger than yourself. And that's the way that something good, something new, something hopefully mutually beneficial can emerge. Mila, love to hear.
So I'm a professional violinist and have played violin since I was 3. So creativity has always been a major aspect of my life. But I loved what you were saying about we all have this creative impetus, and that I think it was Mark perhaps who made the mention of in his practice, in his psychological practice, that he sees differences in people. And in my own personal family, there are differences of levels of what is referred to as talent. And I was never at the top of that list, but I have found that being creative has always been an integral part of my being, whether as a Jewish educator or as a musician. But I wanted to share a sticker that I keep on my phone, which Ronnie, afterward, you just said I'm reevaluating how to view this statement, but it always tickled my funny bone. And it says, I don't make mistakes when playing violin. I make spontaneous creative decisions.
I love that, Mila. Yeah, that's beautiful. As you were speaking, I was thinking too of like, you articulated really beautifully, like creativity isn't just about talent. Like it's nice when it happens. Like the creative process really flows when you have like a lot of comfort with clay or a musical instrument. a lot of experience with it. But like just thinking for myself, I used to play clarinet and I was never like the best, but these days I've just found pleasure in picking it up and playing. And like just the feel of the keys, the sound of the music, like doing something that's nonverbal just like gives me a real sense of joy. So there's just like real intrinsic value in that too. It's not just pleasure for pleasure's sake, but there's a way that pleasure opens us up to our world, to a sense of awe and wonder, which is like really beneficial to us. And I just want to take a moment to look in the chat. I saw some comments in there. Wendy asked, can you give some examples of ways to actually engage our creativity to process stressful situations? Yeah, absolutely. The Jewish studio process is basically a 3-step process. And this is really what I recommend. It's like really good in all kinds of situations. The first step is to set an intention. And we typically write that intention down in present tense positive form, like a prayer that's already been answered. So I want to sort of fabricate a stressful situation to give an example here. Well, it was really challenging to get my kiddo out the door this morning. So I don't think I was my best self. So I can imagine going back. And if I had the presence of mind setting an intention, like I what would it be? Like I navigate our morning routine with ease, right? That's my intention. So like no matter what happens, like that's the attitude I'm going to bring to it, an attitude of spaciousness. We'll get out the door, we'll get there, but I'm just like gonna bring ease to it. And maybe I could play clarinet with that intention, or make some art with that intention, or even just like take a reflective moment for myself with that intention. And then whatever the creative process, the process is just the process. You just follow pleasure. You don't try to make something gorgeous with it. And then the third step, so that's the second step, is that creative process. The third step is to witness. And that's just a stream of consciousness writing that gives you a chance to ask yourself what actually happened, right? And what is that experience, maybe the piece of music or the thing I created, telling me about my intention, right? And often something really surprising comes through that witness. I often think of it as intention is like our prayer. It's like what we want. And the witness is almost like God's response to that prayer. What did you notice? What wisdom is coming through? So I recommend if you get a chance to join us for a public program. We have a monthly public program that's really wonderful called Have You Made Art About It Yet? I see Ronnie nodding her head. She comes. It's really wonderful. And it gives you a taste actually of the experience of doing this practice. I hope that gave you a little bit of a sense, Wendy, and others who are curious. And Pam wrote, I've used art in my spiritual direction practice with directees who suffer from depression and learned that depression is a left-brained stasis and art can give them lightness. Wow, that's really beautiful. Yeah, that really resonates for me. Thank you for sharing that, Pam. Right, there's a way that just doing something with our hands can help us get a little unstuck in our heads and hearts. I've certainly experienced that. And Julianne writes, I think one thing you're saying is God wanted us to make cave paintings, but not to worship them. And once we started doing that, he created religion, but the impulse is still there, just needs to be channeled positively for fruitful results in all ways. That's a very fun reflection, Julianne, and very insightful. Yeah, certainly from a Jewish perspective, right? We're really careful about visual imagery and not worshiping it. We don't want anyone to confuse the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself, to use sort of a Buddhist expression, right? These images are expressions of the divine, but they aren't themselves the divine. And creativity is a way to tap into that deeper source. Wendy asks, how do we make creativity a spiritual practice? I mean, I think I answered that question a little bit of setting an intention, I think helps, right? We then aren't confused that we're just working on creating a polished product. We're doing this for something bigger. Sometimes I'll even set an explicitly like spiritual intention. I know the word spiritual doesn't work for everybody too, so I just want to be careful with that word. But again, it's the goal of opening to something bigger. So I sometimes like invite that sometimes it's just my intention. It's just like I open to something bigger through my art making. It can be that simple. Or I let God show me what I need to hear in this piece of Torah. So there are lots of ways of doing it. And really the goal is to not make it for the sake of creating something, but for the sake of being open, being curious, playing. There's a way that creative practice, there's this wonderful psychologist, Dr. Richard Schwartz. I know we've got at least one psychologist in the room, so maybe you've heard of him. He has a therapeutic approach that's not completely new. It's built on other approaches, but it's called internal family systems. And it comes from this idea that, we're all pretty familiar with this idea that we have an inner child, but there are actually like lots of inner parts inside of us, an inner manager, inner firefighter, that are sort of crystallized in moments of like perhaps stress in our life, when a certain self needs to emerge to deal with a situation. The goal of any kind of spiritual practice or any kind of therapeutic work, if I might be so bold as to say, is to help us tap into our deeper sense of self. And Dr. Richard Schwartz characterizes that deeper sense of self as almost like he doesn't quite use this language, but I would use this language, almost the godly aspect inside of us, our spirit, our soul. And he describes that part of us, that deep self, as curious, creative, compassionate, lots of lovely C words, playful, and creative practice, engaging this as a spiritual practice, helps us cultivate those traits, those qualities, those midot, to use a Jewish language. Let's see what else is in the chat. Ronnie says creativity can open us up to experience what Abraham Maslow calls peak experiences. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. So it really lets us enter a state of flow. Michele Csikszentmihalyi is another psychologist who talks about this. And flow is that expansive sense of self that we're talking about, that deeper sense of self that we're talking about. I see more coming in the chat, but want to open it up as well here, see if there are any more questions or reflections that want to be spoken into the space before I go back into the chat. What else is coming up for you or being sparked by this conversation, either in response to something I've said or in response to something someone else has raised? Yeah, Mila.
Sorry, have to navigate the iPad. During COVID, my congregation here in San Diego, Congregation Beth Israel, sponsored a Jewish doodling. And it was a workshop on literally doodling, but it gave us some parameters. I just now Googled it, trying to see if I could find something on that specifically, and wasn't able to. But the idea is pretty simple, of just using lines. And I do this even while I'm listening to things. So you can see I've got shalom backwards there. Or I'm the beginning of shalom backwards. But it's a very meditative way of, you can use colored pens or pencils, or just like I'm using here, just the pen that I'm using to write down notes that I'm writing from the session. But that's just a very simple, maybe you wouldn't necessarily call it spiritual, it's certainly meditative and mindful kind of something that you can do. And I do it while I'm listening to a class that I attend online, so that my hands are busy, but I'm still actively listening. And I've ended up making birthday and Mother's Day and whatever cards that, you know, the back is just a blank sheet of paper, and then I fold it up and give it as a card. And my husband was very elated when I just gave him one for his birthday last week. And I realized that, you know, the joy or the relaxation that I achieved was also, you know, pushing it or paying it forward because of the joy that he experienced of getting one of these homemade cards, which was, you know, a meditation for me. But just people are asking for different, you know, daily practices, and, you know, even while you're doing something else, you can do something that's beneficial for yourself and potentially still pay it forward.
Yeah, I love that, Mila. Yeah, there's just such like pleasure for us in creating. And it's an added bonus when it's something that we can share in some way with other people. And even in little ways, like I put the pieces that I create behind me on Zoom meetings, and it creates an environment, even though we're like joined together virtually. There was something else in what you said that I'm trying to remember. No, it'll come back to me. I see another hand, Robin.
I was, Mila, what you were just saying, I was thinking, I often think of creativity as expansive and flowing and unrestrained. And similar to you, sometimes when I doodle or I let myself be creative, it also at the same time helps me focus. And I had never thought about that, I don't know, contradiction or tension before. But sometimes by letting go, it centers me and I have new ideas. So thanks.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely found that art making is really regulating. I mean, this has been our experience, and it's backed up by the science too, that it helps us regulate our nervous systems. So at JSP, we'll often do special gatherings after you know, terrible global events, just so that folks can be together moving their hands in the same space. And it's remarkable what it does. And we actually were an totally in-person operation before COVID. And to your point, Mila, we started to have virtual gatherings during the pandemic, and that's part of how we became what we are today. It turned out that people really need this space. They really need space, even if it's as simple as like opening their laptops or having their iPhones in front of them and working on paper, or moving their bodies or making music, whatever it is. And it can be simple. Like, again, we're not asking folks to do anything that is for other folks' consumption. Our invitation for art making is to begin by making a mark on the page. Right? That's all it needs to be. And Panina writes in the chat, I love the spiritual language which resonates with me, and I'm wondering how else you have connected this in specifically Jewish ways. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so at Jewish Studio Project, we've got several like core, like foundational beliefs that come right from Torah and from rabbinic text, and are like animate our understanding of what creativity is. I don't know if I'll get all of them right now. Forgive me if I miss one. One is a rabbinic text from Pirkei Avot in the Mishnah about the Torah. It says hafoch ba v'hafoch ba d'chule ba, right? That the Torah is something you turn and turn because everything is in it. And we love that idea. That creativity is an invitation to turn something over and over again. It could literally be the page you're working on. It could be a situation you're thinking about. But that turning of the thing allows us to ask the question, what else can this be, right? Which is a question that can spur creativity. How else can I see this? What else might this be? This challenging interaction, my sense of like what's happening right now. What else could this be? So that's one. Created creative is another one, right? B'Tselem Elohim is sort of the core text there, that were created in the image of this creative force, the divine creative force. Another one is those are the two that I think are the most important. We have other ones, well, that God creates from chaos, right? There's at the beginning there's tohu vohu. I find this one very powerful in challenging, uncertain times, even in personal moments of chaos, or even like, yeah, when I'm facing some sort of thing that I can't figure out, that we create from chaos and void. We can create from the mess. We can, I think there's like a saying somewhere out there that you can bless the mess. I think that's what this is about, right? There's something that can emerge from this tangle of things. If we just pull at the thread, if we just make a mark on the page, if we just pick up our violin or our clarinet, if we just make a little space to enter flow.
Thank you.
So those are some of the ways that we ground it theologically.
Thanks so much for answering that. I just wanted to add something really small. Just I think what I was thinking of is like, do you see this having, I know you talked about like a physical, what do you call it? The visual arts, but I'm wondering if you can imagine that this would have an application to like even, like Jewish liturgy or Jewish ritual or, like, I don't know, like Jewish study that can be totally influenced by or infused with this creative approach.
Yeah, that's a great question, Panina. Thank you for chiming in and asking. That's really at the heart of what we do at Jewish Studio Project. In addition to I was trying to offer like the simplest form of what we do, but actually the very first step of our process is Torah study, right? So we'll actually like sit down and look at a piece of text, and it could be anything. It could be liturgy. It could be a poem by a Jewish poet or a non-Jewish poet. It could be a piece of Torah. And we notice we don't just like read it to understand it. We read it for resonance. We read it to like notice, what is this stirring in me that I maybe need to pay a little bit of attention to. Then we set an intention from that. That's where the rest of the steps come from. So the intention comes from the text study, like, oh, this is what I want or need, it turns out. And then we create, and then we notice, what wisdom is emerging about the thing we were struggling with, or even about the text. You can write and notice something new in the text if you go back to it too. Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, I'd like to share something. About a year and a half ago, I started a Torah group at our synagogue. And in terms of creativity, what I found is that the group spends a huge amount of time on taking the Hebrew word and its translation into English, and then studying all the other possibilities that same word could have been translated. Anything. It could be the serpent in the story of creation. It could be any of these words. You go to the root, and it's incredible how many other stories are sort of hidden behind or hidden inside all the layers of meanings of the words. Another thing that we do is, if we're going to look at the chapter, I look for all the poems that have been written about it, like the Akedah, or the paintings, like how did Rembrandt see it, how did Chagall see it, how did they saw it in the Middle Ages. And I don't know that you can call that creativity, but it definitely puts you on another level of understanding in terms of Torah songs.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Absolutely. I mean, that's so much of how we actually do our Torah study, is by looking at the roots of words, noticing what other meanings might be possible, looking at commentaries, because we're really like activating kind of a midrashic mode of thinking through that, right? Like what else could this be is a question we can ask of the Torah text, and that's the question that Ramban was asking and Rashi was asking as they were looking at the text, is like, what's missing? How else could I understand these words? So it's a beautiful creative approach to text study. Absolutely. So I know we're coming to a close. I love just all these questions, and feel like there's so much more to explore here. I really hope this sparked something for you. And I want to close with a final slide. Robin, if you want to share the last slide there. This is a blessing that we use often at Jewish Studio Project. We use it in all of our programs as we move into art making. This is something that our co-founder, Rabbi Adina Allen, wrote at the request of our community, because someone noticed we've got a blessing for Torah study, but we don't have a blessing for this other important thing that we do together. So this is a blessing she wrote for creativity to honor the sacredness of this work. And I want to offer this blessing to you. I want to bless you all that you are able to deepen your own creative capacity, whatever that looks like for you, navigating the streets, drawing, dancing, painting, reading Torah, whatever it is. Baruch atah Adonai mekor hachayim, shebara otanu b'tzalmo umazmin otanu lechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Yitziratim. Blessed are you, God, source of life, who creates us in your image and invites us to renew daily the work of creation. Blessed are you, who created us creative. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to Robin or Laura to close us off.
Thank you, Adam, for guiding us in today's session. You've given us so much to think about. I want to let folks know that the Jewish Studio Project is partnering with Talmid of Hebrew College to offer an in-person session on Tuesday, June 17th from 7 to 9 p.m. on our campus in Newton. The session is called Created to Create, Renewing Our Creative Spirit with the Jewish Studio Project, and will be facilitated by Erica Lick. My colleague Laura will put the link in the chat, and it will be in the follow-up email that we send you after the session. Also, the Jewish Studio Project will be offering an online 3-part course in August in preparation for the high holidays. So please watch your email for more information on that class. Our final grow of the academic year will take place on Wednesday, May 28. When we'll be joined by director Igor Galnik and producer Sarah Stackhouse of the play Our Class, who will share questions explored and wrestled with in a play which retells the story of 10 classmates, 5 Jewish and 5 Catholic Poles, as 5 Catholic Poles grow up as friends and neighbors and then face the awakening of hatred with life and death consequences. Inspired by real-life events surrounding a 1941 pogrom in a small Polish village, the shocking, timely story follows their lives from childhood through 8 decades. We hope you'll join us for this special session, even though our academic year is drawing to a close. Talmid of Hebrew College offers classes throughout the year, including the summer. We'll invite you to check our course offerings and sign up for those experiences that will expand your thinking, feed your soul, and touch your heart. And lastly, this is just a little commercial. In November, Hebrew College will be traveling to the Arizona border on a social justice trip led by a group called Tzedek America. We will have an information session next week on Tuesday evening. Laura will put the link for the information session in the chat. We would love for you to join us. Anyone is welcome. And if you can't make the information session, sign up anyway, so we have your contact information, and we'll send you the recording and be happy to answer questions as well. Again, thank you for joining us today. Again, thank you, Adam, and thank you, Laura, for your tech support today.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.